This is Kaye Hayes, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Infectious Disease and HIV/AIDS Policy at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Service. And more importantly, I'm reporting live here at AIDS 2024. I am delighted that I am here with Dr. Troy Grennan, British Columbia Center for Disease Control, University of Columbia. And we're on the heels of a really pivotal and crucial press release, press conference actually, and you were the star. So please share a little bit of what happened.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I was the star, but I certainly was there. So our work that we presented at the press conference, and which is being presented here in Munich, builds on work that has been ongoing for about a decade. Most recently, many people may have seen some studies that were published and really showed strong efficacy for doxycycline used as post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP, for the prevention of bacterial STIs like syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. What many people maybe don't realize is actually one of the first studies that was published on this idea of using doxycycline for STI prevention was actually published about 10 years ago, and it was a small study using doxycycline as PrEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis, whereby you use doxycycline daily. So our study sort of revisits this idea of using it daily, and what we did was we looked at how well it worked for STI prevention in men gay, bi, and other men who have sex with men living with HIV. It was a small study. And so because it was a pilot study, our main findings focused on first the feasibility of this intervention. So we wanted to see how acceptable it was, whether people actually took it, and whether they tolerated it, whether there were side effects or things that really caused problems for people. So what we found was that it was feasible. So in terms of the participants who sort of completed the study, it was close to 80%. So that tells us that, this is something that is acceptable to people. And in terms of adherence, people took it as well. We had good adherence numbers when we looked at pill counts. A bit of work happening still behind the scenes on that. And finally, it was very well tolerated, which we know doxycycline is generally pretty well tolerated, and we know what to expect. In terms of our other findings, our secondary outcomes, we really looked at how it impacted the incidence of sexually transmitted infections. And so here's where really, I think the main interest has been. And what we found was that overall, for the 3 STIs that we were sort of looking at, we saw an 80% reduction overall in the doxycycline group. So just to remind everyone, there was a placebo group as well. Half people got placebo, half people got doxycycline. And so 80% overall, and when you break it down by infection, there was a 92% reduction in chlamydia, a 79% reduction in syphilis, and a 68% reduction in gonorrhea. So overall, really, really promising numbers. Again, a small number of participants, so only 52 people in our study, but really, really promising overall.
Great. Well, that's what we wanted to talk about. And as we look at the future, so we have DoxyPrEP and potentially DoxyPrEP. So what's on the horizon? What's new? What's coming?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we certainly have DoxyPrEP that has been well established. Over nearly 2,000 people have been in clinical trials that looked at this, and so I'm fairly confident that we can move forward with DoxyPrEP as we have been. It's being used in the real world a lot, and it's working really well. I think DoxyPrEP still requires, because we still small numbers in our study, it does require a bit more work before we can confidently say that it's another option. And hopefully another study I'm leading, which is called DISCO. It's a Canadian study happening across the country, in multiple sites across the country, and we've been recruiting for about a year. We expect that we will have all 560 participants fully recruited by next summer.
Wonderful.
And final results will be a year and a bit after that. And so what the study is looking at, it's actually looking at the non-inferiority, which is just kind of a fancy way of calling the study design to when you compare something to something else, which is a bit more standard. So we're comparing DoxyPrEP, which is sort of the more experimental thing, I guess you could call it, or the more novel intervention. We're comparing that to the more established DoxyPrEP to see whether or not it's non-inferior, meaning is it a valid option for people to use? Because we know that people want choice. And so I think, overall, hopefully the study tells us the answers we're looking for.
Great. So we have things on the horizon. That's encouraging. That's good news.
Oh.
And I just want to say, as we close this out, if you want to share with our listeners, like one thing that you want us to take away from this discussion, what is it?
I think the concept of choice is really the important thing.
Okay.
I think as healthcare providers and as researchers, we often make assumptions about what our community, the communities we serve, want.
Okay.
And I think one of the key things is that, we made assumptions about, even with doxycycline, that they would prefer to take PrEP because it's less drug and or for whatever reason. And I think a lot of that may be value laden with the baggage we come with. And when we actually spoke to our community members, we found that we were wrong. And so they were saying, no, I'd much rather take a pill daily. Many different options. But,
Sure.
I think it's important that we not make assumptions and that we sort of talk to our patients and provide them with any choice we can provide.
Great.
Yeah.
So that's the takeaway. Lots of great information. And I want to thank Dr. Troy Grennan for this and live at AIDS 2024.